Mornings with Matt. Today we've got Miss Chris Manola on the show. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Matt.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing?
You know what? We're finding a way. We're definitely
Yeah,
finding a way. I think everybody can agree it's not easy, but we've been having fun finding the challenge of figuring out how to do certain things through this. So
yeah.
yeah. So what can we do for you? You have some acting questions, I hear?
Yeah, I do. And one of them that I really struggle with is sounding natural when delivering my lines, especially if I'm in a situation that maybe I've never been in real life. How do I do that without overacting?
Um so the rule is you have to try to get yourself to a place where you believe that you have been there in real life. And I know that sounds weird, but if we were so this is being recorded back and forth, right? And you have to imagine if you were given this dialogue, even the question that you just asked me,
Mhm.
how would you deliver it as an actor? And could you do it the way you just did it as a person?
Yeah, in this instance, yeah, because this isn't very unusual.
I think it'd be harder than you think.
Why is that?
Because what happens is when we're acting, the the idea is the lines are being triggered from our brains. We're trying to remember the line, then think of what to say, and then try to say it the way we want it to come out. Whereas when you're just talking, um, it's more improvisational. Like you're coming up with it as you go.
Right.
So the idea is that can you repeat the exact same line the exact same way, and it's much harder than you think.
Mhm.
So the goal really is just it really starts with that crazy, unbelievable amount of memorization.
Yes.
So you get there to where you just know this thing so well that you could deliver it 100 different ways, and then you want to practice it as many different ways as possible so that you have options. And then you just listen. So the way that you're listening right now, very intent, um, all in listening, that's where you want to be. Because what happens is instead of listening the way you are right now, we start thinking about our own lines and what we're going to say next. And so you lose the end of what the other person's saying, and then you have a hard time delivering the line the way that it should be delivered based off of what the other person said or how they said it. And then like you take a monologue, which becomes even harder, I think, and now you're creating what the other person's saying in your mind, listening to that, hoping that it's a little bit different in your imagination, and then you're responding to it in your imagination.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask because I know when there's a two-person scene, if I do listen intently and feed off of their energy and what they've just given me, then I can, maybe say my lines better that way. But if there's nobody with me, if it's a monologue, that really is a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And so then what it is double the work because now you have to create the other person you're talking to. So you not only do your work for your character, but you do the work for the person you're talking to also. And you imagine who they are and what they're thinking. And then it's sort of like playing chess against yourself.
Mhm.
So you want to be like I've done this before many times. I'll play chess against myself, or I'll play like billiards or something, and I'll play one on one, but it's me against me, and I really go all in on trying to win for both sides, stripes and solids, or black versus white. So I'll make a move, and then I'll think to myself like, "Ooh, yeah, I got him," and then I'll go to the other side of the table and I'll be like, I wonder what he's trying to do there." And I'll try to beat myself on the other side. So you kind of need to do that for for the character who you're talking to, they have an opinion about you, an opinion about how you said the line that you said, and you need to let yourself imagine that if you screw up or you say something kind of weird, that the person you're talking to noticed it,
Mm-hmm.
and they picked up on it and they have an opinion about it, and then they look at you a certain way and you respond to that. So it's a terribly difficult thing to do, but really it all comes down to your imagination, and are you really believing what you're saying? Are you believing that the circumstance is true? And that's all the work of an actor, is to try to figure out how to believe what I'm saying is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the preparation part is pretty important, because otherwise you're in your head thinking, oh, what is my next line? And especially if two lines are fairly similar, you don't want to mix them up.
That's a
So I
hundred.
think I.
Yeah, that's 100% it. It's all the preparation to what you want to do is you want to prepare so that you can let go.
Mhm.
It's the letting go part that a lot of people struggle with, and I think it might be your struggle, is the letting go part, getting all the way to performance and then not holding on to any choice, not holding on to anything, and being willing to improvise even in a monologue. And when I say improvise, I don't mean change the words. I mean be improvisational to where you could be, you would surprise yourself. So you've never done it this way before, and you're listening to your own spirit inside, and something tells you to get up. So you just get up. And you're like, I've
Mhm.
never done it that way before. So it feels scary. But then from that place, now I don't know what comes next a little bit. And that's a good thing, because your character doesn't either.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something too, is not anticipate, when you've done a scene multiple times, I think it's hard to not anticipate the next line you know is coming, which you wouldn't know in real life.
Exactly. Exactly. So you have to know it so well that you can forget about it and then not even think about it at all. And I like to put myself in a position, especially if I'm in a scene, where I would deliver my line, listen, and be listening so intently that I forget that it's my turn to talk until they're done talking, or
Mhm.
until something that they say triggers me and I want to talk really badly. And then as I go to remember my line, or as I go to speak, it's like the line the playwright or the author gave me is right there. It's just available to me. And a lot of times I think, oh, that's the perfect thing to say. Like that's exactly what I want to say right now. And then you
Mhm.
and then you lay it on them. Um, but it's the have you ever seen a kid who's um, they're kind of in the developmental stage, and they'll say something to the other person, and then after they say it, they sort of repeat what they said. They repeat their own words, like
Mhm.
almost like they like whisper it. They like whisper it. Have you ever seen a kid do that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a little bit like what some actors do, is they're they're looking at you, and they're listening, or they look like they're listening, but really they're kind of like triggering their next line in their head, making sure they're not going to forget what their next line is.
Mhm.
And so you're up here going like, "What's my next line?" Like, and you're trying to like tell yourself what to say. That means you haven't completely let go of the script, and you're not 100% all in on listening to the other person.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of some of the exercises we've done in class. The one I felt was pretty helpful to me was when we bounced the ball back and forth while we're saying our lines.
Yeah.
So we learned to be distracted. I thought that was a great exercise.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And so we do that with a lot of things. And when it comes to your memorization, my whole goal is, how do I purposely screw myself up?
Mhm.
I've been talking a lot on this show about false pressure, trying to put false pressure on yourself in different ways in order to motivate you through this crisis. And
Yeah.
it's something that I've gotten good at over the last few years, of putting these false pressures on myself in order to try to achieve certain things. Because if you
Mhm.
don't feel any kind of a deadline attached to something, then there's no way you'll ever do it. And so, yeah, so the ball exercise is one that's like, okay, I think I've got it memorized. Okay, well, do you? let's throw a ball back and forth and see if you can still rattle this thing off super fast. So what's happening is your brain is having to catch a ball, having to move your hand, and like you're having to do something else while saying your line, and you'll realize I either do know it or I don't. But then we can take it further and we can say, okay, so once you get that done, what else can you do? Um, can you say it while getting dressed and undressed? Can you say it while driving? Can you say it while eating breakfast? Um, and I'm talking like rifle it off super fast, monotone, like the words are just there. No matter what I do, I could still say it. Could somebody come in and scare me and I could just deliver the next line without thinking, you know? So you, once you learn to memorize in this way where the script, I call it like it becomes a part of your body. It's like your hand or something. Like it's just a part of who you are. Then the whole rest of the process becomes so much easier because then you can play without being in your head. But being in your head is like it's the worst thing. It's the worst feeling in the world. And once you've freed yourself of it even once, you know the feeling and you go, "Oh, this is so much better. It feels so much better."
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like the message is do the work.
Do the work. Yep, do the
Do
work.
the work. Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
be and it's not going to solve every problem, but it will definitely be a really good starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
What else you got for me?
On acting, that was my big question, and you've done a great job answering it. So thank you.
Sure.
I guess just on a personal level, I mentioned I'm pretty much an extrovert stuck in the house, and I miss people. I mean, it's nice to see you guys here online, and but it's not the same as coming to the acting studio and sitting next to my fellow actors and talking to them and just having casual conversations out in the lobby. What do you do about that?
You know, that's a good question. I think we're all dealing with that. So, what are you doing right now?
Well, really just these kind of video chats, and they're I guess they're the only thing we can do.
Mm.
I miss a lot of activities. I miss doing a yoga class. When you do yoga, you feed off the energy and the breath of other people in the room, and when you do that at home, you simply don't have that. I miss, I just miss casual conversations. I miss just going where there's people. It's a tough place, and I know those are small problems compared to what the first responders and the healthcare workers are dealing with, or worse, somebody that has the COVID-19. But I think for some of us, there are problems. There are real problems. Not to that extent, but we're still struggling.
No, it is a big deal, and I think there's a whole underlying aftermath that is potentially coming, and I think we all know it. But there's obviously going to be the economic impact of this whole thing. I mean, we just stopped everything all of a sudden, and I was talking to my wife yesterday about just the environmental impact that we don't even know what's going to happen. But it to take 80% of the world and just stop for a second is going to have some kind of an impact. And I told her, I was like, I have no idea what. Like, I don't know, but there's something where when the world is used to having people trample all over it back and forth, and then all of a sudden it's not. Like, I don't know if it means we're gonna have a bunch of mosquitoes all of a sudden, or like what's gonna happen. But there's gonna be some kind of a repercussion. I feel like, and so one of the other, I think, big aftermaths is probably going to be depression. And it's going to be this sense of loneliness, because we've all been cooped up, and I believe the human animal is a social animal, and we need interaction. We need hugs and high fives and handshakes. And some people were saying, "Oh, is this the death of the handshake forever?" And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think it can be. Humans we're just too much a social species. Like we need to get back into this flow. So what do we do about this? I mean, I even think to take what you're saying even further, you think about people in like retirement homes who are literally locked in,
Yeah.
and not sick, but there are people sick around them, and they're, I know my mother-in-law would visit her mom, and she'd have to just stand in the lobby and wave, You know, I mean, that's as close as they could get, was just, you know, doing this. And um, it's sad, you know, it's sad to think about that. So, I don't have the answer. I can only tell you what I've done to try to protect my mind has been this. I assume we're going to go back soon. I really think that. I think it, you know, a couple weeks, maybe a month, and it feels like forever. It really does. So what I've tried to do is rather than have this countdown, because, you know, if you're it's funny how time works. Time is such a mental game, right? So there's something weird about you go to I don't know, you go on a trip or something like that, and you're anticipating something, and it can take forever to get to the thing when you're really anticipating, and then the way back can seem really fast
Right. Yeah.
because you don't want to come back, you know. A day could go really fast if you're having fun and you're not wanting to go to work tomorrow, and the day could just fly by. Whereas if you're at work, you could be looking at the clock and just going like, this day's never going to end. So what is that going on when it's really the same 24 hours? What's happening? It really is a mental game. So the mental game that I've been playing with myself in order to help me, and I've given this advice to a few people, is I've reversed the countdown somehow. So I thought to myself, rather than thinking, and I just put an arbitrary number on there, but thinking, okay, let's say we have 30 days left. And for me, it's always better to over exaggerate a little bit. So if I say 30 days left, hopefully that there's less, you know. So I'm like, okay, there's 30 days left. What does that mean? That means I only get 30 days for me to increase who I am, for me to develop something new, for me to, you know, let's take yoga, for me to, I've decided before I go back to my yoga class, I will have mastered or been able to do a new pose that I could have never done. And so every day is like me pushing to that place, and I've decided that I'm gonna do it before the quarantine ends. Like, I'm committed to doing it. So then all of a sudden you look at the clock differently, and you're going like, oh, I only have 22 days left. Like, I really gotta like hustle and get like make sure that I'm pushing through this, you know, this obstacle, whatever it is. So we've set a bunch of different obstacles for ourselves, and it feels like a race against time. And so time is going by quicker than it was, or than it would be if it was the other way around, where we're sitting around waiting and going like, when is this thing ever going to end? Then you're like the kid in the back of the car that's just looking at the clock asking what time it is all day, you know. And that's I think the big thing, because in the grand scheme of life, a month or 2 months is nothing. It's very, very small. But in the moment, it's huge. It's massive. I mean, we've never done this before. We just shut down for this amount of time. And so everyone's just speculating too about like I mentioned before, about the aftermath. And I think that's where most people's fears are coming from, which is the normal place that fear comes from. You know, they call it false evidence appearing real. So everybody's mostly scared of the thing that hasn't happened yet. Like,
Well, that's true, because I mean, who knows how big the economic impact will be, and I don't know how we go back to maybe that false sense of security we had right before this happened, because things were great, the economy was great. I mean, our problems were pretty. If you had your health, then your problems were pretty light.
yeah,
I think.
I
I mean,
agree. And now we get to a place though where we say we don't know. So
yeah.
I look at this and I say, all right, that could be the case. It might be probable based on what everybody's saying. But technically, what is the economy? The economy just needs everyone to spend money. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if they say, hey, let's go again, and everyone says, all right, cool, I'll just go back to the restaurants I frequent. I'll go back to all my activities that I do, and I'll go back to work. It'll just kick right back on, you know. But if we sit in that place of fear, that's where it's gonna really hold us back. And yeah, I mean, it's just unprecedented waters. It's unknown, which is why it's scary. There's
Yeah, I
just
think that's the hard thing. You know, for me, my paycheck has continued, so that's okay. But I mean, how do people that have gone now 45 days without a paycheck, how do they feel comfortable going to the movies and spending $25 just frivolously? I think that's going to be the
right.
maybe some
And I think
spending.
that's where the stimulus check thing came in and different things. And I don't know. Like, again, I don't know. I think everyone's situation's different, and unfortunately, this whole thing probably, lifted the veil on anybody who is struggling, or working paycheck to paycheck, or in debt, like just needing to relook at some of those habits, even too, because it's a scary thing not to have an emergency fund set aside, and different things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean it is uncharted waters, but if we're all willing to help, we're all willing to be generous and this and that. I mean, you also need the movies. You need a release. You need to get out. So people will find a way. People are survivors. That's the big thing. So if we just believe in people, we have a faith in humanity, and we reopen all of our gates here. I think we're gonna be all right. Um, but like I said, I mean, we're battling something together that we've never ever had to deal with before. So it's the unknown on the other end of it that becomes what we're all scared of. But it's irrational to be afraid of something that hasn't happened yet and may never happen.
Yeah. And
So
there's some good lessons taken out of this too. I mean, I think, having more time with family has been great. The impact on the environment, I think, has been really good. If you think about the smog that we're not seeing so much in Phoenix, and
mhm.
some of the pictures we've seen of waters in other places becoming clear, and dolphins swimming around where they're not normally. I hope that we do keep some of the lessons that we've learned. I hope I keep some of the lessons I've learned.
Yeah. No, I mean, think about that. It'd be weird, but who we've never gone through this before. But imagine if it was a normal. Let's say once a year, it was just the way the world worked, that we all just stopped for a month.
Yeah.
Everybody took a month siesta, and you all just go indoors, be with family, and relax for a minute, and then you go back to normal. And let's say the reason was because we had some sort of evidence about the environment, and we'd be able to protect, the atmosphere or whatever. And we were all convinced that we had to do it, or the world was going to implode. Once we know there's a beginning and an ending to something, all of a sudden the certainty changes everything. So I actually think, it was not good news. I think something came up where Disney fired a bunch of their employees recently. They had to stop paying, like, a huge number of people. But it won't last forever. That's the thing. It won't last forever. So when Disney reopens, there's something about Disneyland and Disney World, I think, that is something where it's going to give everyone peace. Like,
Mhm.
hey, if Disney can open, and they can be open for a couple weeks, and nothing horrific happens, I think we're all good to go. Because that's a big mix of a bunch of people from around the world all getting together in the same space, and it's one of America's, like, you know favorite things of our generation. So if I have this feeling that when Disneyland opens, America opens.
I sure hope so, because I think we're ready. I mean, summer's coming. People want to take their vacations. They want to see their family. For us, we've been pretty fortunate here in Arizona, because since you're allowed to go outside, we can go out and walk, and it's been beautiful. But pretty soon, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it, Arizonans have been very lucky, and when we're dealing with the heat, the 110-degree weather, and we don't want to go outside, and we can't go anywhere, that's going to be a whole nother animal. I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I guess the lesson for you and for everybody here, if you want to try to play my little game, find some obstacles, find some fun, productive, healthy obstacles to almost be afraid of not accomplishing. So you
I
just
love that. I hadn't thought of that, and that's such a fantastic idea, because I am pretty driven as far as goal oriented. So to come up
yes,
with, like, maybe saying I could do 10 push-ups, which probably is not going to happen, but
There you
something
go.
like,
Yeah, that's perfect. 10 push-ups. And so you're like, I have 30 days to do 10 consecutive push-ups.
yeah,
So then you
we're going to
go,
need, we're going to need a few more months.
well then make it 5, whatever it is, and then say, okay, so I'm gonna do, even if you don't get there, who cares, right?
Yeah.
So then today, let's just say you do assisted push-ups of some way. You're on your knees and you're like, okay, I got 10 that way, cool. And tomorrow I'm gonna do 10 or 12 that way, and maybe one regular to start. And then worst case scenario, you fail. You fail at this arbitrary goal you set for yourself, but it mattered to you. You wrote it down. It really mattered. Are you worse off 30 days from now because you can do 3 or 4 push-ups that you couldn't do before? But now, no, of course not. Like, you're better off. And what's going to happen in the reverse if you don't set something for yourself like that? That's when we get ourselves into the danger zone, where we end up on the couch and we end up, doing the things that are out of our rhythm because we haven't found a way to push ourselves. And sometimes it's like being in a community will help to push you. So right now you have to do some of that for yourself, and then when you check in on these video chats and you're tapping into your communities in new ways, you'll have something to share. Like, hey, here's how I'm growing and developing through this, and then that will inspire your community, and then before you know it, everybody's kind of growing together. And I really do believe that for the most part, most people are going to come out of this better and stronger, because
Yeah, I think
we
so.
usually do,
We do, and I mean, hopefully everyone's taking this time to do something positive for themselves. One thing I do, I walk now at night. I try to get my 10,000 steps in since I can't go to yoga or to the gym, and I've been listening to TED Talks
Oh,
as I
cool.
walk.
That's great.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, because it makes the time go when you're trying to get 10,000 steps. That takes a while, so it makes the time go by pretty quickly. And I've been learning a few things too. So
That's great. That's great.
that's something I'm
What's been the favorite thing you've learned so far on a TED Talk?
it was Dr. Amy Cuddy, and she talked about, you can really relate this to acting, your physicality changing the way your brain works. Like she said, stand in a power pose for a few minutes. And this is something we could really take as actors. Maybe when you're getting ready to go on the audition room, maybe you just stand in a power pose for a minute. You might look a little silly, looking like Wonder Woman, but you'll feel more, your brain will follow your body, your physicality. And so I mean, how simple is that? She said, and she even mentioned like how it is kind of unanimous where if you've done something great, to throw your arms up in victory. And she even mentioned that blind people who have never seen anyone throw their arms up in victory, they still instinctively do that.
Hmm.
It's a physicality. It makes you feel better, and I feel
Yeah.
better doing
Yeah. I
it.
do too.
Yeah, hey, yeah.
Brian, do it.
Maybe I
Put
just
your
want
hand.
to be
Oh,
silly.
Joey's here. Hey, Joey. You
But
missed
now we have to do the YMCA for any.
YMCA.
And she, yeah.
No, you're right. And
So
look at us. We're moving. We're smiling now. There's more energy in the room, 100%. So this
yeah,
TED Talk made you smarter. You reminded me of physicality, and I'm going to teach this tonight in my acting class. So there we go. We're impacting each other in a huge way, because we talk about
yeah,
physicality all the time, as you know. A physicality of a character is massive. So if your
it
character
is.
is a depressive type person, their physicality should match it, right? And so you have to find the physicality of the character that you're playing. Well, as an actor, I mean, this lady's totally right, and you're right. Why not put yourself in a power pose? And by the way, most people won't notice. Talking
Yeah,
about people thinking you're crazy because of your Superwoman power pose, they actually won't notice because most people are too worried about themselves.
yeah,
They're in the audition room going like, and they're thinking about whatever. They're not worried about you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So
just power pose it
that
up.
was a great one. And I heard another. It was Janine Driver was just talking about reading people's body language, and she mentioned some specific things you can. She was really more talking about when she was trying to figure out if someone was lying or perhaps guilty, and she mentioned, not keeping eye contact or, hiding your lips, or just the physicality, how you can use other people's physicality to maybe find out where they are at in the moment.
I love that. And I've studied a ton of that because of just acting in general, and I'm writing that book, The Best Listener in the Room. So this idea of listening to body language is it's like a whole chapter that I've worked on. But it's funny. I don't know. Did you experience this when you were learning about it? Because I was studying this guy who worked for the FBI and talked a lot about the same type of things, where like the little nuances that he would look for in people that he could tell whether or not they were lying or not. It's hard to hear that and then not just be very self-conscious of like everything you're doing, you know, like, am I making enough eye contact? Too much? Like, you know,
Exactly.
you get
Or she
very,
mentioned like, and she showed an example, and it was very minor, like the shoulder shrug. But when she was showing it, it was such a minute action. It wasn't like a big action. It was just like a little one. And I'm like, shrugging my shoulders but
yeah,
that was to kind of show uncertainty or perhaps untruthfulness.
yeah, absolutely. And that, to take this again back to the acting part of this whole thing, we do these little nonverbals that make it very clear that we're no longer listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's when I will usually jump in as a coach and say, hey, you're not connected, you're not in. And it can be very hard for actors to hear that, because they're like, what are you talking about? I'm right, I'm right here. And I'm like, I saw you disconnect. I could feel it. And
Yeah.
and so, we got to get you in there and not thinking about your lines, but just completely connected to the other person 100%.
Yeah, because the camera picks up every little motion. I mean,
Totally.
yeah, you and I, if we were talking face to face, I might forget in a second that you maybe disconnected, but if it's on film, you go back and you see it, and you're like, wow, in that moment he disconnected, or I disconnected, or got
Right.
in your head, like you said.
I noticed in the master class we just finished that my chair was a little too low. I think it was set for Brian. So a lot of times I kept like rearranging like this a little bit just to get my back straight. And the truth is, during that exact moment, I'm trying to connect fully, but there's something else going on in my head, right? There's something else going where it's like, I'm also thinking, so I'm focused on you, but I'm also thinking that my back hurts a little bit and I have to straighten my posture or whatever, So there's all these thoughts that go through our heads, and it's fascinating. To me, it's fascinating. And that's what makes acting so special and so fun, is to realize that the potential is forever exponential, which is why you can never repeat the same performance twice, because how could your character be thinking the exact same thing every single time? They couldn't. There's going to be layered thoughts that are in there. So, and you bring yourself into the character. Now, the tone will be the same, but the exact delivery should be different. If it is rehearsed to the point that it sounds exactly the same, then you're not doing it right.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, it was so great to have you on this morning. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. I was so excited when I got the invitation from Brian.
Yeah, we love you. We can't wait to have all you guys back in here. It's going to be great. But in the meantime, we'll see you in the online courses.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you guys do online, because that is one thing that really makes the week feel a little bit normal, because we get right into it and we do what we would do in the studio. And I know now we're maybe looking at it a little differently to see how we can bring in this new form of performing that we do with the camera and the phone. But it's brought a sense of normal to me. So I really appreciate it.
I'm glad. And going back to the positives, we've had now students from other states come in and start taking the classes. So depending on how things go, there's probably going to be a part of this worked into our regular program now. So where the people will come in who can come in person, but then we will have opportunities for people to be training online now that we've sort of figured this out. And the other thing that we figured out is this new genre of acting essentially really should be its own course ongoing.
Yeah.
Because people need to learn that now. Like, it's a new thing that they need to learn. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. As a matter of fact, if you get time and you can watch some of the masterclass that we just did over the weekend, you'll see some really creative choices from actors who have taken some great plays and found ways to make it work in this new format. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I did see some of it yesterday, so I know
cool.
what you mean. Yeah,
awesome. All right, thanks, Chris. We'll see you soon.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Mornings with Matt. Please like, subscribe, and follow us at Deering Acting Studio to keep up with the latest content. For more information on classes, private lessons, or professional development coaching, visit www.deeringstudio.com. Have a Deering day, everyone.